And so, first of all, we have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, so we'll try to be as efficient as possible, or if not, as you heard, Leanne's going to come and pull us off stage. And so our objective is to provide essentially a foundation and a context for the next couple of days, but more importantly, as we all perform and pursue development opportunities, we want to make sure that we have the right foundation. So with that said, we have our panelists already introduced. So let's talk about what we're going to do quite briefly. We're going to have a discussion overview. Panelists are going to provide roughly a 5-minute overview of kind of what they're doing to propel growth in their respective regions. We want to have a little bit of engagement with the audience, ideally 5 to 10 minutes or so, and then we'll do a couple of slides to wrap up. Okay? So let's talk about the continent. One of the realities that most people don't realize is just how big it is. Unfortunately, we have distorted maps that have been distributed around the globe. And this conference is a testament to this because we're having this conference here in Dubai because it's easier to get to Dubai than it is to traverse the continent, unfortunately. And so the continent has roughly 30 million square kilometers. The other dynamic which is interesting is we know invariably because of the topography of the continent, you know, the green zone, as I call it, the vast majority of the continent is in West Africa, predominantly because of the topography. But we also recognize that topography drives development. Then I have this thing we call El Mundo Afro, right? There's 1.5 billion people on the African continent. 1 out of every 5 people on the continent is in Nigeria, facts. But you also have another 300 million scattered around the globe. This is relevant particularly for developers because you're now starting to see a movement around the diaspora. So, for example, Ghana has, Ghana, Gabon, Benin, Rwanda's coming next in terms of inviting people from the diaspora to come back home, right, or come back to the continent. That's driving development. That's driving opportunities for all of us. The other dynamic which is interesting is that there's over 3,000 languages on the African continent, just mind-boggling. I used to live in Ibadan in Nigeria. Nigeria's got 235, 240 languages, right? Some of them very distinct, but people still communicate. It's important we start thinking about our business and how we do business. Lastly, I'll point this out. Most people don't realize there's 200 million people of African descent in Latin America. Has to be Portuguese, has to be Spanish. And 55% of all French speakers are on the African continent, right? France, population-wise, is slowing down. The growth in French speakers is coming from the African continent. This is our reality, right? 18% of the world's population is on the African continent. By the end of this century, it's going to be roughly 40%. What's also important is the growth throughout. 80% of the world's population is going to be in Africa, Asia, right? Just think about the enormity of that, but also the opportunity. And so why is this important, right? I'm going to read this quote because it talks about demography. Demography is destiny, a concept introduced by French philosopher and sociologist Auguste Comte, underscores the idea that population is a core capital and driving force for the economy, pivotal in shaping labor supply, consumer demand, productivity, housing markets, healthcare, social welfare, and the balance of power among nations. We know this invariably. The African continent is rich in all these beautiful minerals. You've got bauxite in Guinea, cobalt, DRC, Congo, diamonds, Botswana, Kenya tea. South Africa has a plethora of things, platinum, and one of them Madagascar, and vanilla. Cocoa. 2/3 of the world's cocoa supply is driven from West Africa, but they process roughly 2 to 3% of that. The big unlock in the future, we'll talk about it in a second, what happens when the continent actually starts to process? What are the implications for distribution, road infrastructure, job, labor pools? That's the opportunity that we have in front of us. The world economy is $115 trillion. The African continent is less than 3% of that. And it's actually slowing down because of the productivity, right? And so this is the unlock. The people in this room can help unlock the opportunities that are the future. And I have what he called, and so what wasn't in my bio, I actually am a professor. I'm a developer first and foremost, but I'm also a professor at the African Leadership Academy and our campuses in Rwanda, in Kigali, as well as in Mauritius. And so I love putting stats in front of our students, and so today you get to walk into my classroom. And so we know agriculture and the importance of agriculture, 32% of the GDP, but 65%, right, of the productive labor pool. But here are the stats that are compelling. 60% of the African population is under the age of 25. Average age 19.4 years. 45% of Africa is urbanized. It will be 65% in the next 20, 25 years, maybe faster. 90% of African dwellings in those cities are informal housing characterized by substandard, unsafe conditions, lacking basic services. 60% of the African continent has some form of access to electricity, right? But only 44% of that is consistent. 600 million people in Africa are without power, right? Just think about that for a second. But here's the compelling, I was talking about this early, 51 million housing dwelling deficit today. Today. Just think about the enormity of 51 million units. And we can talk about it, and our panelists are going to prepare some great slides, and they're going to talk about the impact of that in their respective areas. Let me wrap up with this. The other huge unlock, road infrastructure, logistics. A lot of you, because of your supply chain issues, how many issues have you had to deal with? Okay, where's the port? What's the transportation infrastructure? I can't go through that country, so I have to connect through here. Adds time and money to my logistic costs. As a developer, logistics are everything, right? It's about just in time. I don't want to stack a bunch of stuff in a warehouse. I want to be able to time it, but I can't. I'm based in Rwanda, which is landlocked. So I have to decide, am I going through Mombasa? Am I going through Dar es Salaam? Right? And then what's the road connectivity for that? Right? So we're talking about numbers, right? Roughly $50 billion. That will unlock the transportation road infrastructure, but it could potentially drive $250 billion or 5x worth of value. And lastly, the last piece of compelling data. Let's just add the numbers, okay? Energy, $120 billion per annum for the next 5 years, $500 billion. Manufacturing, we just talked about it. What happens if you start producing and processing those raw materials? 2% of global output, right? Creating almost 35 million new jobs and lifting 20 million people out of poverty, right? Incredible. So now they're out of poverty, now I can buy a housing unit. Right? I can put my kids in a better school, et cetera. We just talked about warehouse, road infrastructure. What does the bottleneck look like for the distribution platforms here? Right? 75 to 100 billion per annum. Hospitality. You mentioned already, Ravi mentioned about what's happening now, 7,000 units in this room. There's 105,000 hotel units in development right now, today, on the continent. And that number is going to grow as manufacturing, power, and all these other issues get solved. Right? Lastly, eds and meds, right? You got 19.4 average age. Those people want to go to school. They want to get retooled. They want to train, right? So you need educations, you need hospitals. I shouldn't have to travel to Europe or Dubai if I'm on a continent to get quality health care, right? Makes no sense, right? But this is part of the unlock opportunity. And then data centers, right? Who knows what that number is? We know that data centers require a tremendous amount of energy. Right? And so we have to be able to unlock that. That is, Google's made big investments. Microsoft made big investments, you heard already, in terms of Kenya, Nigeria, Netflix. They need access to data centers. Those data centers are going to drive more opportunity in the future. So that said, just wanted to lay the foundation. Let's move on to our panelists. So we're going to go in order. Tamer, Saadiya, Paul, and Moiz. And then we're going to take some questions from the audience. We'll do a quick wrap-up, and then we'll make sure, I can't see, see Leanne's in front, to make sure we stay on track on time, okay? And so we're going to ask each panelist to provide roughly 5-minute overview. We have slides. I'm going to pass the clicker, and we'll come back to you, so get your questions and your ideas and your thoughts ready, okay? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here, my name is Tamer. I'm the CEO of City Edge Development in Egypt, which is a company, an arm of the Ministry of Housing. It's a private sector company, but it's owned by the Ministry of Housing, helping the government in the new urban development in Egypt that has been happening in the last few years. So I'm going to give an overview about the growth that is happening now in Egypt and our role in it and the different opportunities. First of all, the company is mainly a real estate developer. Quite in the last years in Egypt, you know, the population growth is every year is increasing very fast in Egypt, and now we are reaching 120 million inhabitants. So, and we used to live on only 7% of the whole country, which is around the Nile Valley. So the government, few years back, they thought about trying to extend the area, the urbanization in Egypt, to double this percentage in few years' time. Eventually, by 2030, we are gonna exceed this doubling percentage because of the high rate of growth that is happening in the country. So if we're talking about only one company, that's City Edge, we have 30,000 inventory units, plus we have handed over than 20,000 only in 6 or 7 years since the company was established. Different types of housing, commercial units, hotel, apartments, and so on. This is just an overview about how Egypt was thinking to expand and make such a growth. We have 37 new cities, urban cities, outside of Cairo, Alexandria, spread all over Egypt. Only in the last 10 years, we have 14 cities, what we call smart cities. They are built, all the infrastructure is already being built to go to these cities, and they were built on a sustainable concept that the city will operate with millions, multi-millions of inhabitants, and contains all aspects, or every aspect of services, and universities, factories, hospitals, hotels, and everything. So this is only one example of 4 main cities. They are all smart, already operated now, most of them, about to finish within few years. They are going to be complete and people will be living there. So my company, which is one company out of a lot of companies in Egypt recently working in the real estate development, maybe some of them are present here, working in these areas, tens of thousands of acres being developed every year. The government is building the infrastructure, the smart concept, the sustainability, and the private sector is sharing in communities and different types of education, factories, hospitals, and everything. So this is basically what we have been working on lately. This is also just an idea about, if you want, I will not go through the numbers, but we are talking about tens of thousands of acres, tens of hundreds of thousands of units being built. Of course, the low and middle income is being constructed and built by the government. However, the private sector is spending heavily in the higher incomes. Of course, Egypt has got a lot of attraction points, the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the old civilization, the ancient Egypt we have. So tourism is considered of a high interest to the country. We have currently 225,000 hotel rooms. There are plans, and we are already working on that, to double to reach 400,000 rooms by 2030. This is being, the country is very serious about this. My company is working currently on 7 hotels with international brands. I think most of them are here today as well. Of course, with consultant suppliers, a lot of partners we have are today in the summit. In the next 2-3 years, we are talking about 2,000 hotel keys, in addition to about 500 apartments, hotel apartments. So all of this growth, to give an idea, the real estate in Egypt is 20% of the GDP. In addition to tourism, we are talking about another 9%. So you are talking about a country thinking about growth. About 1/3 of its GDP now is in real estate and tourism, and this is going on. So we are talking about building the infrastructure with smart cities, with transportation, all kinds of transportation, roads, monorails, and every way to reach these areas. They are sustainable, they are smart, focused in tourism as well, and still operation, manufacturing, industry, and so on. So I think I give in this introduction a glimpse about everything. Thank you.
From Paul?
It's always interesting. Just to segue really quickly, I'm the only lady here, and obviously I'm covered. I look different than the rest, and that's why I'm also holding a different microphone, because these very interesting contraptions around everybody's neck just doesn't work on my head. So just small things that tell you about the kind of gendered world that we all live in. Anyway, good morning, everyone. My name is Saadiya, Aliyu, and I'm really privileged to be here, and congratulations on GBB and the whole team. My history with GBB actually goes back to 2019. They gave me one of my very first international exposures in Kenya on affordable housing, which is central to what we do. I'm Nigerian. We work in a company called Urban Shelter, which is a family-run organization. We're in our third generation, and I'm incredibly proud of what we do in terms of how we're meeting demands for what I call real estate solutions. So not just housing, which is my absolute passion, especially on the affordable end of things. I always say it's quite easy to build $1 million home. It takes very little planning. There's no budget, you spend, spend, and spend. It's far more exciting and I think innovative to look at how to build, say, a $10,000 home. Just the value engineering it takes, the kind of planning it takes, the kind of strategies you have to keep so that you're ensuring both affordability, aesthetics, and of course, that key concern, which is safety. So with that in mind, I'll just give a quick overview. Paul and I are both from Nigeria, so hopefully he'll go into, I think, a bit more detail than perhaps I will. But I wanted to look at what some of the initiatives both that's going on in the private sector, as well as that's happening also in the government, and the kind of, I think, synergies that can be achieved. So in terms of government-sponsored investments, real estate is looked at a bit as something that is a bit of a rich man's game. So there have been very limited, concentrated, what I call, or targeted initiatives. Really, they've only been in the last few years, and they were kickstarted mainly by COVID, where we suddenly realized that homes are not just kind of houses, but homes became education centers, they became the health centers, they became where we gave birth, celebrated weddings quietly, so long as authorities didn't find us gathering more than 20 people and not keeping 3-6 meters apart. They became the nerve center really of everything, and so it became central of how do we provide homes. And there was a medium-term national development framework that was set up by the government to put in together, I think, over 300 to 400,000 units. As exciting as that sounds, we have a deficit that's anything between 20 to 25 million. We don't know. The reason we don't know is we haven't had the courage, I think, to really do a housing census that's very particular to know what houses that we actually need. We then run into the problem of actually what are houses? Do we use houses in terms of what the West would look at a house, single home families, or do we look at it from perspective of our brown culture, and these are multi-generational, multifunctional homes? And so that also became a headache, and we decided to abandon it. So now we have a guesstimate of anything between 20 to 25 million, which is a huge, obviously, number. So they looked at it, the government looked at it from both angles, from the supply side, like I said, to boost this, and then also to do partnerships with companies like Urban Shelter and other private developers. And then from the supply side, from the finance side, which for me is actually perhaps more important, because again, real estate or development or housing or hospitality or retail and commercial is very rarely about the brick and mortar. It actually tends to be more about that financing angle of things. How do we finance? Not just how do we finance, but how do we get individuals onto the housing market? When we go to private sector, you then have, we're contributing in terms of construction and real estate about 10% of the entire GDP. We have about $23 billion coming in from just our diaspora. You have 13% that is manufacturing contributing. And I mention manufacturing because a quick example, in 2022, Urban Shelter, we literally took over a tile manufacturing company to ensure that they were able to deliver tiles for 2-3 projects we had coming on board towards the quality finishes. So if one organization is doing that, imagine the multitude of such companies and how they're boosting local manufacturing. If I knew cement is another one, we're now becoming self-sufficient in cement, where again, about a decade ago, we were not. And it's thanks to 2 major suppliers that realized, okay, there's a huge market in this and put the actual necessary machinery to create that. We have about 5, it's creating also about 5% of total jobs. So the value creation in that is something exciting to know that we are part of. The thing I love about real estate is just, it's what I call multiplier effect. Everything from the nice ladies that will set up a cooking spot near a construction site, knowing they've got a job for the next 2 years, brings absolute joy to me. And then, of course, you've got the local manufacturers like I discussed, but then you also get to travel to quite a few countries to know what's happening. Tamer and Egypt are doing phenomenal things in New Cairo, but also, again, family-run organizations producing tiles in Spain, sanitary wares in Ras Al Khaimah, suppliers such as yourself that are just interventioning in that market, both locally and internationally. It's an amazing space. And then you go on to, of course, the services from the Frank Knights of the world, to the legal, to the finance team. So the value chain of it, I think, is so vast. It makes it a very exciting space to be in. Sorry, I'm mindful of time.
1 minute.
I've got 1 minute. Okay. That's it. No, that's not it. Urban Shelter, we don't just do housing. We are actively now on 17 projects across 4 states in Nigeria with pipeline for another 2 states. The smallest plot we've worked on is 3,000 square meters. The largest one is about 120 hectares. We believe in kind of building large scale, everything from family homes at the very top left over there to tower buildings on the right. One of the things I absolutely love is re-envisioning the African markets. All of us love going to the markets. Dubai has a huge market here. Malls are not for everybody, and that's also fine because we believe in serving all segments of everybody counts, basically, from the bottom of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid. Here we go. Thank you so much, and I hope to engage with you because it's very limited time.
Thank you very much. You've made my job considerably easier talking about the constraints and the possibilities in Nigeria. So thank you very much. My name is Paul Onwuanibe. I work for a company called Landmark. I'm the founder and chief executive of the company. And just a little bit about my background. So I started Landmark about 30 years ago in London, and then expanded through Europe as a serviced office business, then expanded into America. We met a disaster in 2001. We were on the 87th floor in the second tower of the Twin Tower building when the plane went into it. So we lost that office and some of our staff closed down, and we started thinking of what next. At the time, Europe was tough, America was tough, and Africa was rising. So the Africa rising story, we've been talking about it for quite some time now. So in 2003, I packed my bags, raised some money, and created Landmark Africa. We spread out in 17 different cities, 4 first. So we opened up in Nairobi for the east, Johannesburg for the south, Lagos for the west, and Cairo for the north. And then we started infilling. And I tell this story because over the last, say, 20 years, Africa has shown immense challenges, but immense opportunities on the other side of those challenges. But the time has come for us to stop talking about the challenges, and the time has come for us to start ripping the opportunities. We sold our serviced office business about 10 years ago. I think I've lost my mic. We sold our serviced office business about 10 years ago. to a company called Regis. And then we decided to put all our eggs in one basket and create a property platform. I think our experience in Africa told us that one of the things one of the major challenges Africa had was sort of infrastructure challenges, people challenges, and financial challenges. And I thought, how do you mitigate all these challenges? And we thought, well, you know what? Let's put all our things in one place. So we sold our business. We opened our first flagship build, what we call our business, leisure, and lifestyle facility in Lagos, and what we call Landmark Lagos. We built a convention center, opened some high street retail, created an office block, did some residential, and quite a few things. And that's what we see here today. Now, most people call us a property company. We don't call ourselves a property company. We call ourselves a destination creator. So property companies count their success based on square meterage or square footage. We count our success based on people. So we've got a simple business philosophy. We say, number one, as many people here as possible. Number two, keep them here as long as possible. And number three, give them an amazing experience. So the more people that come, the longer they stay, and the better the time they have, the more profitable we are. And when people come and go very quickly, then we're not doing very well. So we count our money in footfall. Now, what does that mean for Nigeria? So as I said, we created our flagship in Nigeria, in Lagos, and over the last 12 months, we've been working on our expansion plans in 12 different locations across the West African coast. The whole idea is to expand the business, leisure, and lifestyle platform, taking some of the best bits or the most efficient bits from Lagos. So we specialize effectively in leisure, hospitality, and lifestyle. So we look for a waterfront, anywhere where there's a waterfront, a river, an ocean, a lake, and try to develop along that. And we're doing that in 12 different places. So what effectively are the opportunities for us here? So in Africa, we've talked about the challenges, and I said the other side of that is opportunity. So there's an opportunity for technology. It's how do we were speaking just before we started the panel, and we remember the days in Nigeria in particular where it was very hard to just get a normal phone, what you had to go through to get a normal phone, and that created the opportunity for technology and for the mobile phone industry. I think we're in Africa and in Nigeria in particular, we're in that watershed moment again. There are so many challenges that seem to come all at the same time, but there's a real opportunity to leapfrog a lot of those challenges. So obviously technology is one. The other thing is scalability. How do you... Just keep going. How do you... Can you hear me? Yeah. How do you take a business and spread it across different African states and make sure that they're all very similar? And we've seen that in Europe. We've seen that in America. So Africa, I suppose it's Africa's time to show that we can do the same thing. The third thing is adaptability. So Africa is not a country, it's a collection of different countries in different cycles of development, different languages, cultures, tax systems. Just working in 17 countries, I realize how diverse Africa is, but that diversity in itself is a strength. How do we figure out a way to ensure that we can adapt in each different place? As I said, footfall is our philosophy. We count the number of people, and as we count people, we count success. So the more people, and one thing Africa has is a lot of people. And then the last thing is integration, is how do we integrate properly and ensure that, we're building in Africa, for Africa, by Africans. Thank you very much.
It's quite a privilege to be in the same panel as these experts in real estate in Africa. My name is Moiz Hassanali, and I'm the CEO and Director of Royal Group of Companies, which is a Kenyan-owned business with roots baking from to 1954. And I'm the third generation in business currently. So we're into various businesses. As you can see, Royal Group of Companies is the main company under which we operate across construction, hospitality, manufacturing, retail distribution, and of course real estate under King's Developers. With over 7 decades of expertise, we've built reputation for trust, quality, and delivery. We've completed 45 plus projects across East Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. We've delivered more than 8,000 houses, and currently we have projects across East Africa ranging to about 10,000 houses, from affordable to high-end houses. So when you're talking about the continent's context, I'll talk about Africa. I think Mr. Omowale mentioned Africa is currently the youngest continent, with 60% of its people are under 25 years. By 2050, we're looking at 65% of these people living in the urban centers. Yet 90% of urban dwellers currently live in informal housing. So as you mentioned, 51 million, there's a deficit of 51 million housing across Africa. In Kenya alone, the shortfall exceeds actually 2 million homes, and it keeps on growing by over 200,000 units every year. Whereas if you look at the numbers, we're delivering less than 50,000 homes. So there is a lot of opportunity. We know that East Africa is at the heart of transformation. Cities like Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, Kampala, Kigali are all evolving rapidly. There is a rapid growth in middle class. There is a rising disposable incomes, increased infrastructure by the government, and governments are more proactive today. At Royal Group of Companies, we don't see this as a crisis. We see it as a call for innovative partnerships, private-public collaborations, and sustainable urban planning. So what's propelling growth in East Africa in real estate? There is a lot of infrastructure expansions, supportive policy environment, regional integration, urbanization, and demographics. Together, all these factors make East Africa a magnet for local and foreign investors seeking long-term growth. So I'll just give a small brief on King's Developers. Basically, that is through Royal Group of Kenya, King's Developers that is where we have looked at housing. We look at innovation, affordability, sustainability, and we serve all tier market. Affordable housing starting at $8,000 up and high end going up to $500,000, ensuring that housing inclusivity across all income levels. What sets us apart is integrated and customer-centric approach, energy efficient design, water conservation, smart home integration, and digital system from booking to the handover of the units. And we've recently gone into, we've employed AI-driven marketing to connect with local and diaspora buyers effectively. So one of the projects that I'm going to briefly look into is President Towers. It is one of our flagship mixed-use project development in Nairobi. It is designed for sustainability and performance. It features energy efficient systems, top amenities, 24-hour security. It's right at the center of Nairobi. And it reflects, and Prism Tower reflects our philosophy, global standards, local expertise. It's a symbol of Kenya's potential and Royal Group's commitment to build for the future.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much, panelists. We'll come back to them in a second. I'm going to talk briefly about Rwanda, and you'll hear from my colleague tomorrow. Craig will talk about Kigali Innovation City in much more detail. So, a lot of people have been talking about Rwanda. What is this thing, Rwanda? It's a small country, landlocked, 13 million people, but there's a lot of beautiful, compelling things happening in Rwanda. One, the government is incredibly intentional about what they do from a strategic planning standpoint. Quick raise of hands, just for some audience participation. Who's actually had the opportunity and the privilege to visit Kigali? And so you know, of course, Craig is 2 hands up. It's an amazing place. I've been working on the African continent for the better part of 35 years. And historically, my favorite place on the continent was Ghana first, Mozambique second. But I just relocated to Rwanda about 2 months. I'll be on the ground time in about 2.5 weeks. We've been set up a company there last year. I'll talk about that briefly, but there are some of the compelling reasons why. It's intentional, the infrastructure is developing, but pretty dependable. The ease of doing business is a real thing, right? We went in there, we go to the redevelopment board, RDB. We registered our company in a day, like a day, right? Saadiya mentioned when I used to live in Nigeria, it took me 6 months to get a landline, right? From Nitel. So, You say what? Because I love Nigeria. That's why. And so with the ease of doing business, the cleanliness, the intentionality of green economy, and they have an audacious objective, right? One, we want to be a middle-income country by 2035 and be a high-income country 2050. You also have this thing around industry agglomeration, specifically around tourism. Rwanda just passed Morocco as the #2 MICE market on the continent. So meetings, incentives, events, there's a lot of positive things happening. Rwanda is also positioning itself as ultra. When they arrive in Rwanda, they don't spend a lot of time in Kigali, go straight to Musanze. And so now we're trying to get them to stay in Kigali and actually do both. And then again, Craig will talk about tomorrow with Kigali Innovation City, Innovation Hub, what's happening there around education, private sector hospitality growth, middle income, mixed use, affordable housing, and then some other, what I call some other ingredients, economic zones, data infrastructure. And they also have been very intentional about the connectivity Moiz mentioned, but really intentional around partnerships with Uganda and Kenya. So when you get an East Africa visa, you can go through all 3 of those countries and traverse through. Quick snapshot of kind of what we do at Grupo: hospitality, mixed use, resi, student accommodations, retail, and opportunistic. President Kagame wants to get to a point where you have 1 million students studying in Rwanda. And then to keep them there with some compelling opportunities, they're going to need to stay. They're going to have, we mentioned earlier about the retraining of this new generation to participate in the digital economy. And so this, right now, we have under development 135-key hotel, contiguous mixed-use resi, master plan communities. We're looking at student accommodations, I mentioned, and I mentioned opportunistically, we've been approached about helping develop an industrial park. I used to live in Cali, Colombia, and so I've done some industrial parks there. So that's Grupo Mecca, just to kind of give you a snapshot. So now we've got about 5, 6, or 7 minutes or so. So if we could turn the lights up for a second and get a sense, does anybody have any particular questions for the panelists? If you have a particular comment, we have a question up front. Do we have the cordless mics? Raise your hand, please. And if you could stand up, name, affiliation, where are you based?
Morning, everyone. My name is Katia Kapti. I'm an attorney with Dentons in Africa and the hospitality sector lead for the firm. Firstly, thank you very much to each of our panelists. As someone who is very proudly African, I take a lot of comfort, direction, and leadership from what you are doing on our continent. My question, so Dentons, we are the largest law firm in Africa by footprint. We're present in over 26 locations. What we come to learn often when speaking to people about Africa, when inviting them to invest in Africa, firstly, our future is not in tomorrow, our future is now. And absolutely aligned with Paul, this is no longer about challenges, but about opportunities. What we can't, however, ignore are the risks. Now, with Africa, we sit in the unique position of having to deal not just with real risks, but with perceived risks. And across our 54 countries, those perceived risks are actually all very different. What I would like to understand from each of the panelists, where you are from, how you integrate as market leaders. What are your perceived risks and what are your real risks? And how do you then engage with foreign investors and give them the comfort they need to be on our continent and do, as Paul says, build Africa for Africans by Africans? Thank you very much.
Beautiful. So now, we could literally spend an entire panel discussion on that question, right? And so unfortunately, we don't have the time. So I'm just going to ask each of our panelists to give us just a couple of words, and I mean a few, so we can get a couple of more questions so we can stay on track. So, Tamer?
So it's really as Dr. Omowale has said. So I will just talk about plans, well-established plans, and strategic vision of the whole country in front of the investor, so he feels safe to invest.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk Africa faces is the risk of Africans not telling their own story. And I think Africans have to go out there and tell their story and not let that story be told by the Western world.
Saadiya?
Sorry, hello? Thank you so much. I think they've given what I call very grand visions, and I'll do the nitty-gritty. It's a bit frightening, but the risks are incredibly rewarding. It won't ever be easy, regardless of which economy it is, whether it's Africa. I won't mention the biggest economy in the world and the most powerful man right now across the ocean and what's going on in their country as well. I think we dial it down, and as soon as we say risk, it's like you have this image of Africa being that only one on the risk precipice. Meanwhile, World War III is happening almost across every continent right now. So actually, Africa might not be the safest place to be. But then I'm an advocate of Africa. I'm an advocate of Africans building Africa, telling the African story, taking the risks. But when we dial it down also, I think you've got to do the hard work of the due diligence. When you do due diligence, do more research. It's actually quite, I don't want to use the word easy, but a lot of us, I think, when we're doing transactions, we want to go for the quick wins, and so it makes us a bit blind and biased to actually what's happening. And if you remove all of those, put a bit more safety, kind of guardrails about your decision making, it's then actually very possible to go into partnerships with like-minded individuals, have a strategy for long-term growth rather than quick wins, and then yes, actually transactions go incredibly well in terms of like a multi-generational, multifaceted way. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, hold on to that, Saadiya. Just hold on to the mic.
Okay, what I feel is, yes, there is definitely risk if you are intending to do business in any part of the world. So, yes. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, you'll have to do some due diligence, get the right partners on board, people who have already experience in these regions. Once you have the right people on board and going into partnership with people, you will understand the market better. And of course, as I even previously mentioned, the government is doing quite a bit. And they are quite proactive today, and in order to encourage more foreign investors to come into Africa and African countries to come and have a look at what exactly it is like. I think all of us have been doing business in Africa for quite some time, and we understand the risks are there, but where there is high risk, there is high reward as well.
Excellent, excellent. I'll only add to that. Because of social media, Africa has a much better opportunity to tell its story. Before, you had very limited, uncontrolled media outlets. And so now, there's so many sources of information. Obviously, not all social media is reality. So you have to find the middle ground, but at least those stories now can get out there. But great question. Couple more questions. Pass the mic. Again, name, affiliation, and then ask a question either Pacific panelists or just in general.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Great panel. Congratulations, Dr. Omowale. My name is Charles Constantine. I represent the group in the construction industry called Goodman. I have one question, and short one, is how do you invite people like us living in Dubai, and in the architecture, construction industry, engineering industry, design industry, to actually be in Africa? And what's the bridge strategy to have a scale-up strategy in terms of countries? I know it's difficult to answer that, but I'd like it to be just short for us. I'm speaking on behalf of many people sitting here, and with the will to do more in Africa. Thank you very much.
Great question. I'll address it briefly, and then actually in a closing slide, I have some points specific to that. As a real estate developer, I'm that guy, I can't do a development unless I walk the block, right? So if you're interested in Africa, you've got to get boots on the ground, right? The continent is huge. We started with that. Pick a region, pick a country, whether it be Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, Rwanda, or another place, and just go, right? Go for a vacation, go for a few days just to see. The opportunities to participate in conferences and different events is a great to kind of get your feet wet, so to speak. And then it's relationships, right? You're going to hear about different conversations throughout the next couple of days. That's why we're all here, right? But I absolutely encourage you, pick a place, pick a point on the map, and just go, right? Get people on the ground, get boots on the ground. I don't know if anybody else want to add to that.
I'll add one little thing. You think about Africa, Africa's all about people. I remember Warren Buffett said, I've never done a good deal with a bad person. So just make sure you choose the right partners.
All right, we'll take one last question and then we're going to wrap up. Yes.
Thank you to all the panelists. My name is Pooja Khanna, and I'm the Business Development and Specifications Manager with MAPE, which is a chemical manufacturing company. I want to know from the panelists, how do you incorporate sustainability in your projects and help manufacturers like us who actually invest a lot of time, research, energy, and corporate deals with introducing products which are very sustainable and have a lot of carbon offsets? Because that's one thing we struggle with in the East Africa region, is to promote our products which are sustainable and convince contractors and consultants to specify our products because they're sustainable.
All right, like literally 2 or 3 words, and then we're going to wrap up because the clock just turned red, which means we have a very limited time.
Sustainability is really important for us real estate developers in Egypt, because it is the ongoing initiatives everywhere now, and renewable energies and everything else, even financial sustainability. So we need to talk much about this maybe after the the summit, the panel. But definitely we are interested on that in my country, and everybody encourages such initiatives.
All right, we'll take one more comment and then we'll wrap up. Saadiya?
If you can, okay, there we go. Sorry, just to say, I both love and hate the sustainability discussion, because it's actually something we've all been doing for, I think, centuries from day one. It's just now there are labels about it, about edge and sustainability and so on and so forth. There are quite a few things, and I think in terms like this is very specific for you and your organization, and you've got to sell that story to somebody like one of us on this panel. What is it achieving? How is it improving lives? What are you transforming? What is the long-term plan of it? Some of us are just actually blind to it, or let me use the word perhaps a bit ignorant and obtuse to it, but really defining, taking the opportunities to engage just like this, so that it comes to the forefront, constantly reiterating that discussion, that argument, that viewpoint, I think can really be a transformative turning point. But it takes individuals like us, because we've all decided this is something that is paramount. There is no hard stop. We won't go back. We're ensuring that carbon footprint that we all know construction has across the world, that we're going to make a stance about it to really be that point of pivot, to say, look, the status quo stops here, and we're committing to doing this. And yeah, organizations have done so. We've done so. Things like solar energy and sustainability, water conservation in terms of meters, to know which ones are more sustainable. How do we conserve water more? Even things like we've partnered up with a particular cement production organization, because their standards are better than the EU when it comes to regulation about carbon footprint. But it's an individual thing that has to now become a collective movement, and it starts with conversations like this. So thank you for raising that.
Excellent. All right, I got 30 seconds, then Leanne's going to come and grab me, so let me just wrap up real quick. So we've heard a lot of different perspectives. Obviously, today is the first day of this conference, but when we think about propelling growth, 5 key points. One, what are practical next steps, right? So I mentioned earlier, select a target city, do sensitivity analysis, get on the ground, understand the sectors, the capital markets, sources of capital. You have DFCs, you have private equity. What I've learned from our experience, don't try to convince somebody who's never been to Africa to invest in Africa, right? Start with Africans. Start with money that's on the ground. The issue is not money, right? There's so much capital in this globe, in the world. You now have to get it targeted and give people a sense of confidence that you can execute, right? That's the critical part, right? You heard the question about risk assessment. So country risk, content risk. Again, get out of the noise from CNN and Fox News and this other craziness, right? Get on the ground and get real data, right? Data matters. Source of information, you got Africa 50, you got the development banks, World Bank. I used to work for the World Bank, good and bad. The good part is they have amazing data, right? The bad part is they're horrific about execution. So take the data from the World Bank and then give it to somebody else to execute. That's my perspective. And then finally, this opportunity today, expand your networks, answer those chats, those texts. It started going off last night for me, right? Sector-specific seminars, university-based research, country-specific investments. There's opportunity everywhere, right? What will it take, right, to put together the optimal team to realize these opportunities? Thank you very much. Can we give our panelists a round of applause? And we look forward to back to you the rest of the next couple of days. Thank you very much.